Okay, man, are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go. Now, come on, now crank this motherfucker up.
Break it down like this.
Hello, Internet. Gino, that being Guido Grieco here again with another episode of Deep Listens, and today we're discussing Trials of Fire, a roguelike deck builder that's also kind of a D&D game. It's got a lot of stuff going on. We're going to talk about a lot of it. Joining me, as always, to discuss video games, Pete Busby. Hello, Pete.
Hey, what's going on? I'm big on deck builders, and this game lets you build so much deck, which is nice. This is probably the most game we've played since the last game we played. So we're on quite the run here. But let me ask y'all, fun fact for this week, how familiar are you with woodpecker tongues?
A lot. How much is too much? How much is normal and how much is too much?
So
I'm a normal amount, whatever the normal amount is.
Gotcha.
Please
Woodpecker
don't
tongues.
look at my internet history.
Woodpecker tongues, very interesting for a whole host of reasons.
They are.
But one reason is they're stupid long.
Yes.
So woodpecker tongues wrap around the back of woodpeckers' brains
Yep.
and their skulls, which is already creepy enough. But they also serve as like a tiny little helmet.
Yes.
Almost.
Mhm.
Yep. So when woodpeckers peck, their tongue provides stability and cushioning to prevent, I assume, woodpecker concussions.
They don't
Or
get woodpecker CTE because of their
Yeah.
woodpecker tongues.
Like, if you look up the diagram, it looks absurd and disgusting. But I encourage everyone to check it out.
Nature is amazing.
Nature is
true.
amazing. Every time
Magic.
someone says something about nature or human behavior is unnatural, just point them to nature.
So I did find an exciting comparison. If our tongues were as long as woodpeckers, they'd be about 2 feet long.
Hell
Can you
yeah.
imagine? It'd be horrible.
Jeez.
I hope that there's a Marvel superhero, like a lesser known one, whose name is Woodpecker Man, and all he has is the tongue.
Just tongue. He doesn't even have a beak.
No, they're like,
Just tongue.
I've got a tongue that's proportional like a woodpecker. What else
It
would you think it would
folds-
mean?
It folds in my skull like it should.
And I can get in car accidents, no concussion.
Oh, totally fine.
That other
That
voice you
sounds
heard
like
earlier
some-
is M. Palladino. Hello, M. You were making a quip.
Hello. That sounds like some lesser known X-Men. I'm willing to put money on that.
It's
being a
basically
thing
half
already.
of Toad.
Yeah, exactly. So
Toad, though, doesn't have concussion protection the way that Woodpecker Man would.
that's
Or
true.
lightning protection. Zing.
Oh, got him.
Haha.
Is that how he died?
Yeah, Storm gets him.
Yeah.
100%.
Anyway,
If he wasn't so hoppy, she wouldn't have had to electrocute him.
true.
He could have just been a sick kisser. So, M, welcome. Trials of Fire. We're going to talk about it. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I just woke up from a nap. I'm excited to get back to it. So let's talk about this game that
Excellent. Before we talk about this game, the normal plugs, you can get in touch with the show at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We have our comment sections and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. And you can also support the show at patreon.com/deeplistens. We are currently only 3 subscribers away from forcing the Off the Deep Ends people to play Unlimited Saga.
Ooh, nice. That's like the most cigar.
Yeah, it's limitless. Jeff, this was a game that Jeff Rude, host of the Off the Deep End show, was playing for the Giant Bomb Community Endurance Run last year and abandoned it because he deemed it too terrible.
Can I ask a naive question?
Yes.
Are we pronouncing it cigar for a deliberate reason and it's actually saga? Or is it cigar?
It's Saga. I'm trying to do a funny, but
Okay.
also
there is a
Okay.
weird spelling.
it is
to
weirdly
it.
spelled. It's
Yep.
capital S, lowercase a, capital G, lowercase a.
That's cigar, yeah.
So, I mean, look, once you do weird intercaps like that, you can pronounce things however you dang well please, I guess. So, yeah, we are only 3 patrons away from that happening. So go ahead, get in there, and any amount over $1 will get you access to our Discord. It'll get you a chance to proposition off the deep ends to play a role-playing game of your choosing. Someone, I think, mentioned .hack recently, which is horrifying.
We should play a .hack.
I have all of the PS2 .hacks.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the one they made that terrible show out of?
I think it's the other way
How
around.
dare you?
Oh, the show started and then they made a terrible game off it?
Yes.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
It is a game that is supposed to be an MMO, but it is not an MMO. It's just like sort of emulating that experience, and not very well.
No.
So people yell mean things at you the whole time you play?
Probably.
Yeah, I mean that's my experience.
It has very bad AI,
Yeah.
so it does not feel like an experience you are sharing with another person.
Sure doesn't.
Yep.
You do send emails to your guild members, though, and that's fun.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And all the levels are like the same. It's boy. Someone should make them
Classic
play
anime,
one.
though. Oh yeah.
So yeah, do that. And another thing that you get when you join the Patreon is you get access to our Discord, and then you can chat with the hosts, learn about things in advance, and you might also end up on the Discord report.
The Discord report. Boop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doop. This week on the Discord, we have new icons. We
Yes.
got an art upgrade just today. We shelled out for some fancy new digs,
Yes.
which you are probably seeing if you're listening to this. Is it on the stream right now?
It is on the stream right now. You can see one of the new arts. We have multiple. Some of them you don't know about, but the folks in the Discord have known about this being in the works, at least for a few weeks now. But now we've got the final cuts.
Yay!
Yay.
And it's very nice.
It is. I like it. I like it a lot.
And also, the GBC is coming up.
Correct. The Giant Bomb Community Endurance Run is this weekend. If you're listening to this, it is tomorrow, April 8th through 10th. We are raising money once again for Pencils of Promise, a charity that builds schools, trains teachers, and sends kids to school in developing nations. We are going to be streaming for 3 days, but it's not it's not a fundraiser where everyone's streaming all 3 days. It is a fundraiser where we form up like Voltron to make a 72-hour schedule. So someone is always live, but not everyone is always live. So for that, if you are familiar with the Deep Listens family of podcasts, then you would know, for me, I'm going to be playing first Tales from Off-Peak City. As folks who have listened to the podcast know, that game was a front runner in some of our categories in Game of the Year last year. It's a weird freaking game, and I figured why not show that to a large audience, because it seems like a thing that people would be interested in. And then after Friday doing that, I will be doing a segment playing Stranger of Paradise, Final Fantasy Origins, blind, Saturday and Sunday. And my donation incentive is, because that game is so emo, the more I raise, the more emo I will become in my attire and my makeup and my hair. So right now, let me see what I'm locked in for. So I just cleared $1,000 raised, which means I am locked in for a sweet knuckle ring, like one of those rings that goes around your knuckle bend.
Oh, nice.
Then a Hot Topic button up. Then I'm gonna have to shave my facial hair into a chin strap. I have not shaved in a month, which is really upsetting to me. Then I'm gonna be in for black jeans, then a chain choker. And then I'm gonna have to shave my facial hair into a goatee.
Can we slide a chain wallet somewhere in here?
Oh, that's a good call.
That's a good call. I didn't get a chain wallet.
Time to go back to Hot Topic.
I have to go back to
I
Hot
used
Topic.
to think I used to think those are the coolest effing thing in the world when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
It's like chains, whoa. But at a mere, I think, $150 more raised, I will have to straighten my hair live on stream with a flat iron.
Are you personally going to do it?
I think my wife's going to help me with that because...
So on stream, you're going to burn your face. That's what you're saying.
That's the thing, is I don't want to burn my face. But the plan is to not stop the playing of Stranger of Paradise while this is happening to me. So I will be trying to play a video game while someone has a very hot iron near my head. And then at $1,500, I'm putting on eyeliner. At $1,750, I'm gonna get a soul patch. I'm gonna shave it down to a soul patch. And then at $2,000, I'll paint my nails, probably black or purple.
So you've already raised this amount. Are you going to save your face shaving for the stream?
Yes.
Are you going to just do it immediately?
I'm going to... Early Saturday, I will do the chin strap, and then I'll wait like a half hour or an hour, and then I'll do the goatee so that people can tune in for that.
We need to appreciate the transformation along the way.
You don't go straight... Like... Any sort of werewolf transformation movie, you don't go straight from person to werewolf. You need the phases. You need the like weird veins and the weird bones.
I'd like to share something with you people now.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's not about me. So
Okay.
I read this advice column because it's a good advice column every once in a while, and sometimes they give relationship advice.
Okay.
And somebody wrote in because they were having a serious problem because their only fetish is dramatic hair transformations.
What?
Yeah. So they define somebody who would like basically shave off their long hair before they could get aroused.
Every time?
Yeah, which is a very inconvenient fetish. But the column actually had pretty good advice. They were like, have you considered wigs? You could cut a wig and it'd at least be easier. I don't know how it turned out, but I thought that was very sound advice. And a very inconvenient fetish.
That is a really inconvenient fetish. Like, we're going to go months without doing anything because you need me to shave my hair off every time?
Every time. Yep.
Could you just have one, like, very hairy arm and one bare arm and you just shave one arm alternating?
I don't know if there's a body hair corollary.
Okay. Just weird patches everywhere. What's going on? Look, man.
Relationships are tough. It takes compromise.
Yep, it takes compromise. Love is struggle. So other things for the GBC are we've got Zombie Pie. Chris Zombie Pie Redacted of Off the Deep End is going to be playing... Okay, first off, he's playing the Journeyman Project Pegasus Prime. Then he will be playing Final Fantasy 13-3 Lightning Returns. And then... So that'll be on Saturday, and then on Sunday... let me give you the times. So Friday it'll be 6:30 p.m. to 1:30 a.m. East Coast. He'll be playing the Journeyman Project. Then Saturday, 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. to 1 a.m. He'll be playing Lightning Returns. And then on Sunday, 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. he'll be playing Six Ages Ride Like the Wind. And if he raises $2,000 before that, he's going to eat an entire Little Caesars pizza in a single sitting. So think about that.
And you get to pick what's on the pizza, right?
You do get to pick what's on the pizza, and he did not say...
It had to be food?
No, he didn't say it had to be Little Caesars toppings.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been brainstorming some ideas. I'm not going to say them here because I don't want him to protect himself.
That's a very big hole to leave in your planning of this charity event.
Oh, he's also every time he raises $200, he's got 2 unopened packs of jelly beans, which are called Bean Boozled Extremely Hot Edition, and they rank from Sriracha to Carolina Reaper.
My God.
And every $200 raised, he's going to randomly select a jelly bean while blindfolded and then eat one of the beans. And if he raises $2,500 before the end of Saturday, he's going to play an extra hour of Lightning Returns.
It's for the kids.
It's for the kids, yes. And Braden, Arbitrary Water Redacted, the other Redacted brother, is also participating. And he is going to be from 9 to 2 on Friday, 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. on Friday, East Coast time. He's going to be playing a Wheel of Dubious Wheels. He's taken the greatest hits from his Dubious Wheel streams and combined them into one giant Dubious Wheel. And so that will continue 12 to 4 on Saturday, and then again 11 to 3 on Sunday. So that's, and Jeff Rude, host of the Off the Deep End podcast, will be popping into people's streams, being moral support. So that is the Deep Listens commitment to the Giant Bomb Community Endurance Run. So reminder, you can watch the show, giantbomb.com/chat. You can also watch the show on explosiveruns.com. Be sure to go there, donate. There'll be links for donations. And also, if I outraise ZP, I can make him play Final Fantasy IX again.
I will have my usual corollary to your bet, which is if it's between you and him within like $20, I will donate enough to put him $1 over you.
Why would you do this?
Because I'm a monster.
So rude.
Have we not learned anything in my year of torture?
But just make him play 9 again. That's way worse than whatever he'll do to me.
I don't know what he's gonna do to you. What is his side of this bet?
I don't know. I don't think he's picked. He's waffled.
Oh. Well, that's unexciting. Tell him
It
to
is.
get his shit together, and then I will go with my usual thing.
Excellent. So there's all the community stuff. The Discord has been a lot of discussion of that for the last few days. So it is now time, once again, for my obsession of the week. And this obsession is actually kind of a correction from the last obsession. And I shouldn't say the last obsession. The last podcast, there was something that I wanted to say during the Elden Ring podcast that I forgot to say, and I feel I should use it here. Difficulty settings. Difficulty levels in games. People who play Souls games say you can't do it because authorial intent. You can't have a difficulty slider or a setting because the game is the way the developers made it, and if the developers made it that way, you can't say anything about it, which is really just dumb thinking, just in general. Otherwise, like, what is the point of critique then? But my point is mostly that when your game has a difficulty slider or difficulty settings, accessibility settings, things like what Psychonauts 2 does with allowing you to turn off combat or make combat easier, things like what Celeste does in terms of allowing you to get extra jumps or turn off death or have infinite jumps, those difficulty settings are an admission by the developers that there are things to enjoy about their game other than the difficulty of the combat or gameplay loop that is central to the game. They are saying, we think that the story or the art or the music, there is something here about our game that is worth seeing beyond this puzzle of mechanics that we have built. And I would like to posit that it is actually a sign of confidence in your game to build those accessibility options, not a sign of acquiescence to the player. It is saying, hey, we've built a cool thing. We want as many people to see it as possible. And we recognize that not everyone will come to this game with the same set of expectations, same set of experiences, and the same set of desires. So I want to say, difficulty settings in games and difficulty and accessibility sliders, great. Do more of them. They should be in every game. It should be everywhere. Because you know what? If you're making a game, have confidence that there's stuff beyond the game design that is worth seeing. Games are a multimedia experience. Treat them like it. Any input on that?
Well said. No, I think that covers it. There's been a lot of debate online about if things should have a less difficult setting, and that debate is generally accepted as stupid.
Yes.
By most people who are making games. Whatever you need to get through the experience is what you should have. So I am in agreement.
Yes, I once had this discussion with a Souls fan. They were like, but what would you want to see in the games other than the killing of the big enemies, and I was like, don't you people always yell about the story and how it's actually really in depth? And like, if you read 5 item descriptions, you'd understand the dark history of this one character. Well, what if I could read the item descriptions without getting mugged by a skeleton? Would that hurt my experience? I think not.
It goes back to what we talked about in the last episode about different players coming to games for different reasons.
Yep.
Some people want to kill the big monsters, and some people just want to see what the item descriptions are.
Yeah, some people just want to see the weird underground night sky.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so without further ado, let's get to Trials of Fire. Speaking of difficulty sliders and games that need them,
Yeah.
Flawless.
Trials of-
You can tell we've been doing this for a long time.
Spoilers. There are some in here. Can you find them? It's a secret.
Maybe. Trials
I'll
of Fire.
tell you where they are.
For a price.
For a price.
Trials of Fire is the game of this week. I picked it. Let me just pull up some information on Trials of Fuego. I just want the developer name. This was developed by What Boy Games. It came out May 7th, 2019, and it is a roguelike deck builder that, as I said at the top, is a little bit of Slay the Spire, Griftlands, deck building. It's got a hex grid. Everything is hex-based, and it's also kind of like an RPG, like kind of D&D, but not really. So it's it's run based. The runs range anywhere from a half hour to 2+ hours. There are multiple difficulty settings. There are a bunch of unlockable classes. When you start the game, you are given 3 characters. As you play more and unlock more by achieving certain goals, you'll get access to a total of 9 playable classes. Each class will come with basic armor and equipment, and your goal is different depending on which mission you're on, but the general goal is to wander around this hex-based grid, not die, and then kill a big enemy at the end. It is not quite as structured as Slay the Spire, but it is also... It's just differently structured. I shouldn't say not as structured, because there's definitely a structure. It's just very differently structured. So, Trials of Fire, M and Pete, why don't you let the listeners know your kind of roguelike deck builder experience level? Because I feel people know that I play a lot of them.
What? So we've played Slay the Spire.
Yes.
Have we played any other roguelike deck builders?
Not for the podcast. No, I don't believe so.
That is my experience level.
Okay.
Oh, I shouldn't say that. So I'm sorry for interrupting. One more. I got really into Cartoon Network. CartoonNetwork.com had a deck builder game. That I got
Hell
really
yeah.
as a child.
Of course they did.
Yeah, that's the extent of my knowledge.
Excellent.
Yeah, I can't actually remember any other ones that I've played in recent memory besides Slay the Spire. Can you point to any other ones?
Yeah, so
no.
I've played Griftlands, Rogue Book, Slay the Spire, this game. Inscription. We played Inscription.
You played
counts.
Inscription.
Which one was Inscription?
Oh, I played Inscription.
We didn't.
Okay, we did an extra show on Inscription. I forgot you both were not on that show. But yeah,
Yep.
Inscription's another one. So I've played like 4 or 5, and then there was a while there where I was doing just like deck builder streams. So I played some that were not roguelike, but were deck builders, like the Monster Rancher Battle Card, Yu-Gi-Oh, the Yu-Gi-Oh Game Boy Advance game. I think Shadow Memories, something. It's over to my left, but I can't quite reach it.
You played one of the bad Yu-Gi-Oh games? We gotta play one of the good Yu-Gi-Oh games sometime.
That doesn't exist.
Yep.
So yeah, I've played a lot of these. So Pete, as the person with the least deck builder, and
Yes.
I mean, you played Magic the Gathering, so like we've played a
Yeah.
lot of card games. So Pete, as the person with the least experience in one of these games, how overwhelmed were you
Oh,
booting up
dear
Trials
God.
of Fire?
It was distressing. It was staggering. I had to do so much math. Like, there's so many buffs and debuffs and multiplications. There are just so many mechanics. And like, ordinarily I might like that, but with a genre I'm less familiar with, I found it much more, overwhelming is probably the best term, than Slay the Spire, which I found at least slightly more straightforward.
Yeah, for sure. Em, how about you, as someone who is versed in these but not as versed?
Yeah. Th- This is another one of those games where I have done some slight research into the studio that made it. In that I went to their Twitter in the last 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's all the research you need.
yeah, that's about it. This is their debut title. So I'm going to give it a little bit more lenience than I would have when I first came into this. They only have 600 Twitter followers. That's like, I have 2/3 of that, so I don't feel like they're a big name that we need to tear down.
Yeah, but by our powers combined, we have that many.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that when I first opened it up, it was terrifying. Uh, the premise is that you are like in this storybook, and then each character has a deck of cards which is associated with their class, and then they rank up and they get more cards. It's kind of a same thing as Slay the Spire, but something about doing it for 3 different characters was mind-boggling to me, with 3 different like mechanics to go with each character. And then let's not even get into the equipment system that is also in this game. There's a lot. We're going to unpack each thing in here.
Yes.
It's complex.
So the tutorial of this game, which I 100% recommend you play, will not prepare you for what the game actually is.
No.
No.
The UI and UX in this game does it no favors as well. But like the tutorial tries to explain, okay, so combat in this game is a little bit Final Fantasy Tactics, tactics grid-based game, and a little bit card game. So the way that a battle unfolds is each of your characters draws a 3-card hand to start, assuming there are no modifiers or anything else involved. You start with no action points. You can discard a card to get an action point or an energy. You can then spend that to play a card, and each card will have its different amount of costs. So a 1-cost card takes 1 energy, 0 cost is free, 2 costs 2. So you have to discard down in order to play cards. So you have to know which cards are irrelevant, which cards are relevant, and make choices accordingly. Then your characters are on a hex grid. So when you create an energy, you can spend it actually 3 ways. So discarding a card makes an energy which you can use to play a card. You can also use it to move 2 hexes, assuming, again, you haven't modified your move distance. And if you just discard a card, get an energy, and don't spend it, it will add 2 defense to your character, because your characters have a base of 10 HP. If they get reduced to 0, they die. So you don't want that to happen. So you can pitch cards to just create defense for yourself. And if armor gets damaged, it doesn't go against your health. But you will basically get your armor reduced down to 0 at the end of every turn anyway. So everything's temporary for the most part.
I didn't even know that you could get armor by just pitching cards.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Huh.
It's super
That-
important.
Another thing.
That was not explained.
Not explained well. That's why So there are 3 things that discarding your card does, and the game will it tries to show this by having a +2 next to your health number when you discard a card and don't spend. So it tries to let you know which character will get defense, because remember, you have 3 characters worth of cards, and the defense will only apply to the character whose card was discarded and then not spent. So you need to kind of keep track of, okay, if I pitched 3 cards, whose cards am I spending when I play the next card I play. So it really behooves you to sequence well, to keep in mind all of the stuff that's going on. And when I said this is a hex grid and it's got some FF Tactics stuff going on, it also has line of sight, which applies because there are 3 different ways you can attack enemies: melee, ranged, and magic. Magic does not care about line of sight, ranged cares about line of sight, and melee means you need to be adjacent to the enemy. So there's a bunch of obstacles, and Pete, you might want to talk about this, how the battles kind of unfold from a visual perspective.
Yeah, I'd love to. So basically, the game made a decision that, look, we're filling up all this space with mechanics. We don't have any room for anything else. So what they did was they did this sort of gameplay structure where you have, like Gene said, sort of these hex tiles that you can move around, and you get these little tokens to denote your game characters. They're little tokens.
They waddle around.
Yeah, exactly, right. And you get a little chopping sword motion when you do a melee attack, a little shooty bits when you do magic. So it's a nice way to sort of create a logic for simpler animation styles. Because it's a game board, so it makes sense that they would have game pieces as opposed to full on avatars.
Yeah, they look like cutouts, and the game. Everything we've talked about so far is just the combat. There's also an overworld map where the roguelike part happens. But just talking about the combat, it takes place almost like a book. The whole game is framed as inside of a book. So when you go into combat, terrain will pop up out of the ground as the pages turn, and it's a cool visual effect. But at the end of the day, if you've played a Warhammer, Warhammer I think is one of the better games to prepare you for this. Line of sight is all that matters. If you have line of sight on something, you can hit it. If you don't, then you can't hit them, they can't hit you. And the first thing that I learned to level up in this game is that to get into melee range, I can spend my energy to do that, or my enemy can, and it behooves me to make them do it.
Yes, you don't want to move much, honestly.
Yeah. You basically pick a formation, get into that formation, and then you wait for the opponent to come to you.
Yes, there are a lot of enemies, and once you learn what the different enemy archetypes do, once you see one that is melee, or if you're in a match with a lot of melee mobs, your first turn or two is generally just spent hunkering down and sculpting your hand so that you can kill them when they get into melee range, because they're going to spend all of their resources running across the field at you, so you can just mow them down. Which, I don't know, it's a little unintuitive, that you would just want to sit there, but that is 100% the correct thing to do 9 times out of 10.
Although, you mentioned hand sculpting, but you can only carry over 1 card into the next turn.
That is correct. So
you have to burn everything else besides 1 card. Otherwise, the game will not let you advance, which can create some analysis paralysis. If you don't know what you want to do for the next couple of turns, it can be a real challenge to decide what the important cards are. Usually if you're not in melee, you can pitch all the melee cards. You can pitch any weakness cards which come up if you're injured or something.
Yeah, injuries in this game show up in your deck as cards. It's junk in your deck, kind of like Slay the Spire.
Yeah, and they do just nothing, or they have a detrimental effect usually. So it's filling your hand with junk and then deciding what the useful junk is which isn't for everybody.
Yeah, and the game we've mentioned like there are melee attacks. You can only use those when you're adjacent. Ranged attacks, you can only use those when you're not adjacent. Magic you can use whenever, and there's also powers, which are effects that will kind of add long-term effects to your character or enemy characters. So like one of them is I think it's Boast is a good one. Like you get +1 damage to all of your attacks for each enemy that's adjacent to you. Or Goad. Goad is the name. So Goad, basically, you'll put this on a melee character. They'll get into melee. The more surrounded they are, the more powerful and dangerous they become. So like those sorts of things you can put on your characters, but they take their effect over time. So you kind of want to do that sort of stuff early on in a battle and then carry them over. Did either of you notice that those powers have health?
Yes, if you take damage, they will go away.
I did notice that. I didn't like it.
I didn't like it, and I didn't learn it until I got messed up and one of them fell off. Because again, not very well explained. You also can't have more than 4. If you try to put a 5th one on, it will kick off one of your previous abilities, which, again, things you learn when you play the game, not when the game tries to explain things to you. Yeah, and then all of the characters have their own little, like, niches. Like, the 3 that you start with are Hunter, Warrior, and Elementalist. So you've got your Mage, your Ranger, and your Warrior class. Warrior's all melee, Ranger's kind of your range, and then your Elementalist is your magic class. And you will eventually unlock 6 more that are a little bit wilder. But each class, do you want to explain the class abilities?
Oh boy, which one are those? Like the general deck stuff?
No, like they each have talents that trigger once per turn.
Oh boy, yeah, you're right. Forgot about that. Oh god, what even were they?
The Rangers is pretty easy. The first attack they do every turn deals +2 damage.
Yeah. They all have like one talent, it's called, which usually is something that helps you out once per turn. And then there are certain things, like if you equipped a certain item, it can refresh it when something happens. So it's kind of like their unique thing that you're supposed to build around. I think I only looked at those like once. I think I needed my alchemist to do some range damage, and that is something that he is good at. So I was like, okay, I'll just sort of build around this. But there's already so much stuff to keep in my head. I could not tell you how you're supposed to manage 3 characters, which are picked out of 9 potential characters. Like, finding the optimal way to do this, I cannot imagine being that kind of player with this game.
Pete, did you engage with this? I mean, you have to. You do it by accident a lot of the time, but
yeah, honestly, I tried to engage with most of the things, but I pretty much just picked a play style that I thought would work, and then just stayed with that as long as possible. So in order to reduce my basic decision tree, I was like, all right, I got 1 tank, 1 support, 1 range, and just left it at that.
Okay. Yeah, so like each of the classes has their own talent. Depending on the talent, they really vary in terms of their utility and what they want you to do. So like the Elementalist, the first card the Elementalist plays every turn is 1 willpower cheaper, 1 energy cheaper. So you get 1 cheap move and then everything else is full price. So that one's pretty straightforward. The Warrior, I think the first time they attack, they defend their party members, just get 2 defense. So the Warrior is your tank, so by attacking, they are protecting the other party members. Ranger just deals extra damage. But they get more eclectic the further out you go. So like the Assassin gets, I think, a willpower and draws a card the first time they attack every turn. So they just can keep attacking. The Warlock, which is a debuff class, the first type of damage they do every turn will inflict a status effect on the enemy. So if they do melee damage, it weakens the enemy. If they do magic damage, it electrocutes the enemy, which electrocute is a status effect where every time you hit that enemy with a ranged or melee attack, they'll shoot an electric wave out and damage all enemies, I think, within two hexes of them. So that's good for damage dealing. And then if they do a ranged attack, it frostbites the enemy. So they get -1 to movement and -1 to damage until the next turn. So like all this stuff, I just named 3 classes. There are 9. Each of them have different power talents. And boy, there's another mechanic that we need to go over, which is the equipment. Pete, explain equipment.
Yeah.
So you get equipment. You have like a helm spot, a armor, 2 weapons. Yeah. I'm describing the tank right now, I guess, and then 2 sort of like side piece weapons. But each of those weapons also comes with cards. Those cards can be removed if they're crummy or upgraded if they're good. And I think I'm missing something else. Basically, it confers armor, which turns into extra health at the start of each battle.
Yeah, so these pieces of equipment, they either give you cards for your deck. They give you cards for your deck, and then they either give you armor or quality. So armor is just extra health, like you said, Pete. It's just a buffer on your health. So like instead of having 10 health to start, you'll have 17, 14. And so until you take damage down to 10, none of that damage counts basically against your character permanently. So if you're start at 17, you take 7 damage, you'll start your next battle at 17 health, no detriment. If you get knocked down to 5, then instead of 17, you'll start at 12. And your HP will keep ticking down from there. So it is beneficial to have armor so that you have that little buffer on your health. Quality is basically mulligans. So if you're familiar with Magic the Gathering or other card games that allow you to mulligan, you can ditch your cards, and instead of spending the willpower you get from discarding those cards, you can click a button to basically redraw as many cards as you discarded. So the more quality you have, the more mulligans you get. You can only take 1 mulligan per turn, but look, if you start with no mulligans, then you're just stuck with whatever you draw every single turn. If you get a bunch of mulligans, then you can really be picky about what kind of cards you want. So yeah, the decks in this game are a combination of the cards you start with, cards from your armor, and then you also level up after every battle. And level ups can be assigned to each of your characters. You get to pick which character levels up every time, but you can't make one character just outpace all your other ones. So you basically eventually have to level them all up before you can give another level to a single character. And the level ups are really important. Em, how did you find the level up system?
So, when you level up, you have 9 cards that are part of your core deck. And when you level up, you get a choice usually of 4. If you find the difficulty settings, you can change that, which
I never found those.
You never found those.
Gino's like the hell with it.
Let's just say it right now. Some person decided that the way to put the difficulty settings in the game was to put a very small compass on the mission start page by where the difficulty setting is. Also, this game has a difficulty setting. It goes easy, medium, hard, and then like cataclysmic or something.
Cataclysm.
Yeah. Which I found medium was often overtuned. So I can't imagine what people were doing on Cataclysm.
Just tears.
Yeah.
I now play on hard, and I found once I learned as much as I've learned of the game, medium was too easy, and hard is still like, and we'll go over the difficulty later, but hard is still too much for me.
Yeah. So if you look when you're starting a game, there's like a little, it's like a compass or sundial looking thing. You click on that, which I don't know why I decided to actually click on this, because there's no indication that it corresponds to anything.
Why would you think it would help you?
Yeah, but that is actually where you can set like, you know, if you want to not lose the game, if you happen to die in a non-story mission, um, you can turn on like a whole, like, there's like 12, 15 different settings that you can turn on. If you do, it does not qualify you for the leaderboards, but who cares? I did not care. So I just turned
Not
on
you.
like, what is the way to make this bearable? Anyway, when you level up, you get to choose between 4 cards. If you go in the difficulty settings, you can change it so you get every card that character has available. And then that replaces 1 card in their main core deck. Usually these are better than what is there originally. Like you start with, the Slay the Spire, like basic set of abilities, and then usually there's like 4 that are spec'd for the class. 2 of them are moves, 2 of them are melee attacks. Some classes have ranged abilities. And then all of the ones that are upgrades are usually better than, the stuff you get off of equipment.
Usually, but they're usually much more specialized
Yes.
to the class. So, like, some of them will be, say, for example, the Hunter. He has a few different ways he can go. He can be a ranged damage dealer. He also has a bunch of goons that he can summon that will like help your party, and they will get to move around, and they'll have specializations. Like some of them will be flying and be weak, but they debuff your enemies that are within range. Some of them are really mobile, and they'll do combo attacks. So if the hunter attacks an enemy and they are adjacent to that same enemy, they will do a follow-up attack on that enemy and deal extra damage when following up. So like the hunter's got these 2 roles where he can be this ranged attacker. He can also be a summoning a bunch of extra adds to your party. The elementalist can be a damage dealing nuking class. It can also be a supporting class. There's some spells that ice spells will debuff your enemy and make them deal less damage. Electric and fire spells will deal crazy damage. Earth spells will generally add defense to characters. So you've got all these different ways that you can spec these characters, but it's really dependent on what abilities you get to draft, right? So like when you level up, you'll get presented with 4 cards. You can also upgrade the cards in your deck, and upgrading can do anything from like increasing a card's damage by +1, or reducing a cost from 1 to 0, or 2 to 1. So like you generally want to be picking. You want to upgrade as much as you can, right? You want to make your cards as good as possible. So that's another option that's always available. So how did y'all find the drafting?
I mean, at a certain point, I was just like, all right, upgrade the move cards to whatever the better move is. Pick like, the alchemist had a like a flask thing that went in a radius.
Yes.
And that it affected like enemies and friends differently. Like it would give your allies armor and then do damage to enemies.
I think it was
So I
called
was
like
like-
Intelligent Virus or something. Or Engineered Plague. It was a cool card name for sure.
My move almost throughout was to always try to minimize will cost.
Mm-hmm.
Like willpower is a very finite resource, and like especially if you go against enemies that just start like burning through cards, it overwhelms you just very quickly. So my thought was always, all right, if I can get the willpower down, I can start spamming cards, and I can at least get more things happening. And I generally felt that when more things were happening, it favored me.
Yeah, for
If
sure.
you are doing things, that is good for you.
Better than not doing things, except moving. Don't move. Let them move to you. But other things are generally good.
Unless they're magic, in which case you have to run at them.
Yes.
Which is really, I gotta say, like the balancing between magic, melee, and ranged. When melee, you need to be adjacent. Ranged, you need to have line of sight, and then magic is just like LOL, whatever.
Yeah.
It is a little bit frustrating.
There are some restrictions on, like, maybe you need to cast this one directly next to you, or this one goes in a straight line, but just pick magic every time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's the only thing that restrains the magic from being the best thing you can do is the classes that have magic, because they tend to be squishy.
That's true. I will say though, like there are a lot of cool cards in the game, but my favorite, almost by far, was Long Shot.
Ooh, that one's
That
fun.
one's good.
Yeah, so Long Shot gives you a damage boost based on how many tiles away you are. So if you catch Long Shot at the beginning of the game, when you start just clear across the field from each other, you get like a quick 9-hitter for free, basically.
What was your favorite card, Em?
Probably that flask thing. There was also cards that you can like put on your ranged units to make you not need line of sight, or you could do like there was one that was like what was it called? It was like a rebound shot or something, where you just pick a terrain piece, and then any enemy within line of sight of that gets hit by the attack. I really like the ranged, like, randomness elements towards the end of my game.
Yeah, it's a ricochet shot.
Yeah, exactly. Because at that point I was like, I have this one tank who is just going to keep them in melee range, and then you're just going to shoot them. And that usually worked pretty well, because they can rack up a lot of damage, just because they have a lot of ranged cards in their hands, and they all get bonus damage off of that. So that was probably my favorite class once I unlocked it. I don't think it was... What class was that? I think that was the...
So it was a ranged character?
Yeah.
So it's not the ranger, is it the war chief?
No, the warlord was my, like... She does, like, buffs.
She's the best. She might be the best class, in my opinion.
Yeah. She's mainly, like, close range, and has a lot of support. Might have been the alchemist that I just respec into ranged.
The alchemist is fun. So his talent is every turn, one of the cards he draws, he just upgrades for free, which is cool.
Oh, is that how it...
Yeah, it's random. He just randomly upgrades one card every turn.
I didn't know why it was doing that. I was just like, okay, buddy, you do your thing.
Yeah, the warlord gets one willpower every time they do something that impacts another character positively. So, like, if you cast a card that affects everyone, you just get a willpower payback. So, my favorite ability was Team Spirit, which was a warlord ability. It's a power that gives you +2 to movement, and if you upgrade it, it's +3 to movement. So your normal moves become 5 hex moves. So what I would do is I would be fighting an enemy, I would move adjacent to them, wail on them, and then move 5 hexes away. So they had to chase me down again. So basically they'd spend their whole turn chasing me. I would get into melee range at will, mess them up, and then run to the other side of the map. And then they'd chase me again. And basically I'd kite them all over the map, and they'd never be able to catch me. Which seemed broken.
It's a good strategy. Until you come across a wizard who just throws magic at you and doesn't care.
Yeah, that's how I lost when I had this build in hard. I thought I was gonna win a round, and I ran into 2 wizards who both had ice magic, and I didn't have a move card in my opening hand, so they just froze me in place, and then I got killed, unable to move because frost decreases your movement distance, and they don't need line of sight. and there were like 5 enemies because in hard they just add an extra enemy or two to every encounter, and they have more HP.
Fun.
It's very cool, very fun. So let me just say that I do like the occultist as well. It's the like self-damage class, the suicide aggro class, but it's also kind of a weird support character. So like his talent is whenever he inflicts himself with a status effect, he draws a card and gains a willpower. And I think actually if he inflicts a status effect on a team member, they draw a card and get a willpower. So he's got one of the strongest talents, and he's got a card, I think it's called Unburden, where he loses all negative status effects on himself and does an AoE damage that does 2 damage per status effect removed. So what I enjoyed was there was an acid spell that he had that was one willpower to use. It inflicts 1 acid on himself and deals 2 magic damage to an enemy. But it goes back in your hand if you hurt yourself doing this. But it makes acid, so you always hurt yourself when you do this. So you can basically use this as many times as you have HP. Like acid stacks, the more acid stacks you have, the more damage each instance of acid will do to you. So it does 1 damage, then 2 damage, then 3, then 4. It grows pretty significantly. But if you use this, you get a bunch of stacks of acid, and then you unburden yourself. Like you can go 2, 4, 6, 8, and then unburden, and then just deal 8 in an AoE as well. So it was just like the closest thing to an infinite loop I could get in this game, which was very cool. But I always lost with the occultist. Like it was always very, moth to the flame situation, just dying all the time. But you can only die if you lived.
That's true.
So the difficulty, how do you feel the serving sizes in this game?
Oh boy. This is probably my biggest complaint with this game. So if you were to play a game of Slay the Spire, your run could last up to probably like, what do you think, 20 minutes, 30 minutes?
I mean, an hour if you're going to beat the heart, but like you'd have to play pretty slowly.
Yeah, like it's not too long. This game really wants like investment in each run.
It wants your whole day.
Yeah, it is basically an hour minimum if you're going to get to the end of whatever quest you do, or more. Some of them go up to like 3 hours, which I don't know how they're judging that. But even if you like beeline to the finish, these are pretty long, and the amount of like investment in each run that you have to do, like regardless of what the end result is, you need to like build up your team. You need to get items from all of the random events on the map. You need to maintain their food. Like this is
right. We haven't even talked about walking around on the main map, which let's talk about that. Like
talk about that.
You're moving around on this main map, and there will be locations that pop up that have question marks over them. If you go up to that question mark, it will cause a roguelike event to happen. So you'll get a random event, and that event might have like 2 or 3 different choices. The choices will have potential rewards or potential outcomes, I should say, underneath each of the choices with percentages assigned to each outcome. So like you might say it might be like you stumble upon a precarious tower. You climb the tower. You find a fancy goblet on top. The ledge starts to crumble. Do you A, grab the person who's on the ledge, which will mean that you save that person, but you only have a 33% chance of getting the item? Or do you let that person fall and grab the item? So that person will be guaranteed to get injured, but you'll get whatever the cool item was. And then it can range, from like take HP damage, get a side quest, get items, get into a battle. And a lot of these are percentage based, like completely raw percentages. So did you at any point care what the hell the option in the dialogue said you were doing?
Like what the rationale for the thing was?
Yeah, what the rationale was, what the game was telling you the story was of
What's
this
the
event.
percentages?
Just look
Yeah,
at the percentages, right?
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Like,
Eh, eh,
there are some that are supposed to be like a moral choice, like, oh, do you steal these villagers' food, or do you leave it for them? I'm like, I have fucking 2 food walking around. I'm gonna run out. We gotta talk about the food system, because that was like,
Go for it.
I find the if you're gonna put a food, like, maintaining food thing in your game, that's like a sure sign that you are doing too much. Almost universally. Thank God it wasn't like some of those other games that are like, what kind of food do you make for your crew? Like, I don't fucking care. It's just
walnut bread. Ooh.
Hamburgers.
that
Everybody
is
gets
gonna
hamburgers.
that's gonna increase your damage in the next fight. Just fucking feed them. I don't. So you have to start 2 food out of 10. As you are going along, you're like, there's a meter that is at the top. There are 2 meters. I'm going to talk about each one. The first one is your morale. Also a very bad idea. I don't know why anyone was like, yeah, let's put that in there.
Well, that's the timer that's supposed to make you go to the
Yes.
final objective.
I
But you already
know
have
why it's
food.
in there.
You don't need
but-
food and morale.
Exactly. There's a morale system. As you get closer to the objective, it goes up, because your characters are like, yay, we're gonna complete the thing. I had a few games where I did not know where the objective was, and they ended in failure because I could not figure out where to go, and my characters were just like, fuck it. So that was demoralizing, no pun intended.
And also, when your morale is low, you get buffs
Yeah.
to your characters like HP and stats when their
Mhm.
morale is high, and the lower it gets, the less your buffs happen. So you just die a lot
Yeah.
of the time when your morale gets low for one reason or another.
It's a self-fulfilling loop. What are they?
It's a vicious cycle.
It's a vicious cycle. You are low on morale, so you do not do very well in combat, and so you take injuries, and then your morale gets lower. Which, I guess, good work on making a diegetic product. And then there's the food. As you are going along, there's the other meter, which is like your if you're tired or not. You have to rest in order to like refill your health. It also is where you upgrade your items, or like you can hone them to take stuff out of your deck if you don't like something that they're giving you. One of the cards, like if it's useless, you can just get rid of it. But
You can meditate, which will allow you to upgrade
Oh, God,
spells in your
yeah.
deck or remove spells from your deck.
there's like 5 options. There's
yeah,
a
you can
lot.
get even more. And when you upgrade your weapons, that is the only way you can get upgraded versions of weapon cards, unless you're the
Mhm.
alchemist. So you do that because upgraded versions of cards are much better
Yes.
on the whole.
But you need a certain type of item in order to upgrade things, and that could be different depending on what the item is that you're
If it's
upgrading.
bone, you need bones. If it's
Yep. If it's
skin,
wood, you need a
skin.
wood.
Skin. Building a
Yeah.
lot of stuff out of skin in this world.
Yeah, and it usually corresponds to the item rarity, because of course there's item rarity in this game.
And they're green, purple, and green,
Green,
blue, purple, and orange.
I think it's the standard Diablo like array. Orange is the best, because of course it is. Yeah, because that's just what we've accepted for the past 30 years. Yeah, so you can run out of food, and then your like tired meter will start going down more, and that will put more weakness cards in your deck. Like you will just get a tired card whenever you draw your hand, which does nothing. Like I guess you discard it and you get a willpower, but also it is one less like useful card that you have.
Yeah, it's a
So,
dead draw.
Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah, and the longer you're in a battle, you will also dynamically get tired in the fight. So if a battle goes long, your deck becomes less useful the longer the battle goes, which is also very cool and good.
Exactly what you want when you're fighting something with 70 health after you've been fighting stuff with 15 health.
Yes, and we will go over that in a second as well. So, like, did you notice that your tiredness meter, depending on what terrain you're going through,
Yeah.
it will increase faster or slower?
Mm-hmm. Yep. There's different terrain. There is some that's passable. There's some that's not. You might have to go around some mountains, or you could find a path through them. If you look real closely, sometimes there's like an indication that you can go in that direction. Usually you just have to follow whatever your marker is pointing at, and it will generally be a trek through the desert. Which,
Yep.
you know.
Yeah, I didn't notice that you move twice as fast on roads until one time I accidentally had to walk on a road, and I'm like, my guys seem to be moving real fast.
That's weird.
Also, the amount of tiredness you restore when you rest varies depending on where you are resting. So if you are in the open, you get less out of your resting than you would if you were in a town or if you were in a forest, which, again, like, all of these things are mechanics that you are allowed to put in a game, but should you put all of them?
Why wouldn't we just put every single mechanic?
Like, when I go into my pantry, there are M&Ms, there are also spices. I don't put both in my salad.
Just fear, Gino. That's fear.
It's weakness.
That sounds like cowardice. Donate to the GBCer, and Gino will put all of the things in his pantry into a salad.
Nope. Don't do that. Though I will do emo song sing along for $20. I've been practicing.
I'll give that one to ZP instead. That sounds more his speed.
Well, that's basically what his pizza thing is.
True.
So yeah, the tiredness meter, that's really frustrating because, like you said, Em, if for some reason you find yourself without food, you basically are dead. If you find yourself moving in the wrong direction, so the reason why the determination meter is there is to stop you from just exploring forever and just boosting your party so high that you can beat the enemy. It's basically trying to force you to move on. But you know what else could have done that? If you just restricted the size of the map.
Oh yeah, the map is gigantic. I'm pretty sure it is procedurally generated each time because there's no like landmarks or anything. It's just sprawling, and there's so many random encounters, and this is dependent on like which. We didn't even talk about the different stories. There's a whole bunch of different stories.
You pick your missions at the beginning of the game, and depending on the mission, you'll have different final bosses you need to fight, different objectives you need to do.
They give terrifying, like, perspective lengths, too.
Yes.
Like, here's how long we think this will take you. Years.
270 minutes. How much is that in standard time?
Hours? That's 4.5 hours.
That's like, it's a lot.
And like, it cannot be emphasized enough, if you just get the wrong event on any of these runs and you are not a master of this game, you could just die. Like, you could have spent 2 hours building your party up, and now you just run into a group of enemies. Oh, I've got a powerful ranged party. Oh no, I'm up against a bunch of enemies who use stealth, which means that I can't attack them at range when they're stealthed up. Crap. I guess I can't attack them until they are on me. Oh no, my ranged party's dead. Oh, I've got a really mobile party that's melee focused. Crap, I'm up against wizards who shoot ice magic. I'm just dead. I've got a melee party and I'm up against an enemy all archers. There's an enemy that when you melee attack, when you deal any damage to it, it will deal 2 damage to everything adjacent to it. So if you're a melee party and you're up against that thing, it just kills you. Like, there's a bunch of very specific, and then sometimes you'll run into like boss enemies.
Yeah.
Just
around.
Just around.
Just hanging out, you know. We were bored this week, so, you know, whatever.
And those boss enemies just don't obey any of the like the difference between a mob and bosses. It couldn't be more different. Like, how many bosses did y'all see?
Big spider, summoner guy,
Dragon,
big fly.
Did
elf,
either of you fight the
wizard.
illusionist?
Yeah.
think-
where, like,
oh,
just
yeah,
warps
yeah.
between two other things.
Yeah, so every turn, at the end of her turn, she spawns 2 copies of herself, and you don't know which one is which until you attack them. And she does not just, like, stay in one place and then the other 2 are hanging out. Like,
It's horrible.
she just gets to escape combat randomly for no reason. And her abilities basically punish you for using powers. Like, she's got a bunch of abilities. Like, a way to compensate for this is, okay, she's not being very aggressive. Let me put powers on that allow me to close the gap with her. Oh, she's got moves that punish you for using powers. She also has a bunch of moves that I think chill you so you can't keep up with her as she's teleporting around everywhere. And, like, regular enemies have 15 HP. Tops,
Yes.
most of them. These bosses have 60, 70. I fought one with 200.
Yeah. I found a worm with 130. It had 3 segments of itself. I fought a dragon that had 70. At 95% of my playthrough, that ended that run after an hour and a half. It's
Yeah,
rough.
I fought an enemy that after I dealt X amount of damage, it burrowed underground and was not attackable. And then it would randomly appear, and depending on where it appeared, most of its attacks were melee. So I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to wail on this thing. And then it burrowed underground, and it popped up next to my only character at low HP and killed them instantly. And I was like, oh, cool. A thing I could not have prepared. Like, there was no good way to prepare for this. I could not have known where it was going to pop up because it's random. Cool, I guess my run's over. And this is how so many of my runs ended, was just like, oh, I ran into one enemy that's just the wrong combination for what I'm doing.
Cool.
Or, I got to a place where I was going to rest, and you know what? It turns out that this was an unescapable battle.
That was my favorite. And all of the battles, once you get into combat, you cannot run from them. Is a very important thing to point out. There is no escape button. There's no, like, move your characters to the end of the screen and then next turn you will leave. Which I had a lot of instances where I was like, okay, I've gone into this random event. I've taken some damage. I need to just get to the next place and I'll rest. And then I go to the next place and it's like, oh, there are bandits here. There are no other options. You must fight. I'm like, my guys are starting at like 5 health. There's 5 guys on the other side of the screen. I am pretty fucked. And usually that would end a run.
Yeah, and every time I looked up, like, hey, is this game weird and fucked? I would find, like, the Steam discussion on this game would always be one person saying this game's messed up, and then like the next 3 replies would be people who were in the early access who would say this game's actually way less messed up than it used to be, so actually it's good.
It was even worse before. Which you
now you
love
can
to
mulligan,
hear.
so now it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And this game really reads to me as a game that was in early access and feature creeped. I couldn't tell if it was a Kickstarter game that feature creeped or an early access game that feature creeped, but it feels like the sort of thing where it had a very tiny audience and then they got all the input. And they made an incredibly niche, incredibly off-putting product. And great for the people who it's for, but boy oh boy, like UX is a skill. Like getting people to know what the buttons do, where things are, what anything does, what things mean. Like you can't just put all of it into a like menu nested deep in your game and say, well, it's in there, they should know.
The compass is so egregious.
Yeah, but Pete, did you find any of the UX especially egregious?
I just like it was such a chore just like linking everything. I guess like learning, like, okay, I have all these numbers floating around constantly, and I have to keep track of all of them. And I have my little icons that denote the powers, and I have to keep rechecking those because I forget what the tiny little icons are. Like, it just became, I wasn't particularly mad at any one thing, but you stack all these things on top of each other, and then they're inescapable. They get so annoying.
Did y'all notice what that the legendary equipments have passives in addition to their abilities that they give you, the cards?
Wait,
Yep.
so like the thing on the left and then another thing?
So yeah, all of the legendary equipment has both like what it's going to do for your armor or your quality, and then the cards that it gives you, but they also tend to have some additional passive effect. Like there was one that it was like Juice of Chaos or something. I forget what the name was.
Juice of Chaos.
But what it was anytime you use an ability that has a damage range, you always get the highest amount.
Mm.
Yes,
So
that was
if
my favorite.
If you gave that to an alchemist, all of a sudden they are a damage monster. Like there was one that was like, I think every turn you draw an extra card at the beginning of your turn, and you could put one in on top, one card from your hand on top of your deck. So it basically gave you more deck manipulation. Some of them, I think, like when you took damage, it did cool stuff. So like there were a ton of. Oh, one of them, whenever you summon an add, it's active. So usually when you summon an extra ally, they don't get to do anything the turn you summon them. With this thing equipped, they do. So like they were really, really powerful, but I did not notice my first like 3 runs that they did anything extra because there's so much stuff on the screen all the time to consider. How would I read everything? It's just hard to keep all of it straight, to be honest.
Most definitely. I mean, this is the thing, like, I applaud them for fitting so much in, but like at a certain point it's just diminishing returns. Like it actively makes things worse.
Hmm.
Yeah, this is a game that you can play forever, and one run starts to feel like forever. But yeah, the depth really, if your UX and your UI can't handle it, it's detrimental, and you make a product that will repulse as many people as it brings in. And like I came in wanting to like this game, and I did like it. Like once I realized that the equipment was as important as my leveling, that actually honing items and removing abilities is sometimes as important as adding them, that I need to get certain items so that my characters are survivable. Like it became possible to beat, but I don't want to play it for 2 hours every run and almost at any time can lose because of something coming up. Like it's just too much to ask.
Hmm.
So that's all I've got on Trials of Fire. Do you have any closing thoughts?
Have I come back yet?
Yes, you're
Yes.
back.
Okay.
Welcome.
I
It's the
also
big
want.
side.
Can you feel my tired meter being very low with this game? It's a game that wants to do like a very like world simulation approach. Like it wants to be D&D basically, which I think a lot of games have strived for since we started playing D&D. But making a roguelike that is so much it's hard to swallow, especially I was playing what was the game, Ring of Pain at the same time, which is another like card deck builder situation, which I think Gino you've played, but I don't know if Pete has. We haven't played it for this show.
No.
Which runs last for 30 seconds or like 15 minutes. So by comparison, I was like, I really want to not be playing Trials of Fire anymore. I would rather be like, I could do like 10 runs of Ring of Pain, which were much more engaging than like, what I was going through in Trials of Fire.
Yeah, I mean,
Which
Slay the
is
Spire.
unfortunate.
Slay the Spire got it right the first time. It started off this whole like roguelike deck builder boom, and it realized, you know what a good draft time is? A half hour to an hour tops.
Yep.
That's how long these runs should be. Every roguelike I've played that is inspired by Slay the Spire says, what if it was twice as long and had more story? And you know what? That's wrong. You screwed up. You goofed.
We're going in the wrong direction. Make it smaller. Please, God, make it smaller.
You know, people, they watched The Lord of the Rings and they were like, my game could hold the same amount of attention as The Lord of the Rings. But no, it can't. And boy, same thing with movies. Like an hour and a half movie now, I am so happy when I hear that. And then I hear about The Batman, which is 3 hours, and I'm like, I could watch 2 better movies in the same time.
Yeah, it wasn't very good.
Okay, good. I haven't watched it yet. I do recommend The Lost City if you haven't watched it.
I watched those Batman movies from like the late 80s, early 90s. Those hold up, sort of.
Ooh, the Tim Burton Batman?
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Michael Keaton.
Yes.
George Clooney, too.
Michael Keaton is the best.
Yeah. Anyway.
What were we talking about? Something not as good as Michael Keaton? Right.
One thing I also wanted to point out, which I don't know if this bothered anyone else. This is a very minor thing. As you're moving around, there is a day-night cycle.
I did notice that.
And when you are in a menu, it is dark when it is dark out. And that was so annoying to me.
Did it just make it hard to read things?
Yeah, it made it difficult to read things because it's like black on like, now it's like a grayish because it's supposed to simulate like a nighttime, I guess. You're not supposed to be reading this storybook by night. If you look at the screenshots on the game, you can actually see like some different examples. Like when it's bright, it's really bright. And then when it's dark, it's super dark. And I hated that shit. If it's a menu, keep it. It doesn't have to all be diegetic. That's all I'm saying. In a game of a lot of stuff, this is not a very big deal, but goddamn, bothered the crap out of me every time.
I mean, it is the sort of thing where, like, the game is not visually very appealing. So
I
when
think
they
it's
went
got an aesthetic to it.
It's got
It's
aesthetic,
got a
but
vibe.
like,
Yeah.
you know, it's stick figures, not stick figures. It's stick puppets, you know, waddling on a hex board. I did, you know, something that did bother me. Sometimes I'd try to click on a town, but my characters were moving, so I'd click on the wrong hex, and then they'd kind of like do-si-do around the town, and I'd be like, oh crap, now I'm losing all this tiredness meter for nothing.
This has cost me 0.01 tiredness. This will not be
Curses.
recoverable.
Yep.
Scrap the whole thing.
But I mean, the game doesn't. I mean, it has a look, but it's not. That's not why you're here. And the sound is the same. The music is not very appealing. It's fairly generic fantasy fare. So yeah, I think this is a game where you really are just coming to it for the mechanics. And thankfully there are difficulty sliders. If you click the compass and rub your belly 3 times, you can change the difficulty settings. But I strong caution. Look inside of yourself and say, do you want to play a deck builder that is the most? Just every mechanic you could want, and then several you don't. If the answer is yes, play Trials of Fire.
I cannot recommend it. But if at any point you were like, oh, that sounds fun and not completely overwhelming, give it a try. Well, I don't know.
What do you have to lose? I guess.
It's your money.
Yeah.
$20
It was on sale on
Steam.
Steam recently.
Go for it.
Yeah, this just reminds me of the time I tried to upsell someone at the store we used to work at, and they came in and they said, my child likes board games. And I was like, oh, they like board games? And he's like, yeah, what's the best board game you have? And I was like, have you heard of
Twilight
Imperium? And he
Yep.
was like, what is that? And I'm like, it's $300 and has 1 million pieces. It's the Cadillac of board games.
It takes 8 hours to play the first part of the game.
There are 5 people in the world who know how to play this game.
Yep.
And they all go to PAX Unplugged.
Oh, boy.
And this is the Twilight Imperium of roguelike deck builders.
It really is, which is unfortunate. Because that is not a good title to have.
Look,
But-
the people who love Twilight Imperium will talk your ear off about it.
True. I will say,
All
This is
5
the-
of them.
this is the first game the studios.
Oh no, Robot M's back. I assume that is this
Damn
is
it.
this is the game. This is the studio's first game, and so we need to be a little. Don't be too harsh. Like they did make an interesting game. Like it's not bad.
They did. They made a
Yeah,
lot.
you got it.
Like there's a lot of game.
It's just overwhelming.
They made the most game.
Yes. So Pete, any closing thoughts on Trials of Fire?
No, I mean, like I said, I don't play many deck builders. I do like them when I play them. I just like a little less of them. This isn't a game for the noob deck builder. I'll say that.
No. As someone who came to this, I'm like, oh, this character's like 2 different Magic the Gathering archetypes in one character. Oh, and this is a really advanced Magic the Gathering archetype that most people don't play. Oh no.
Yeah, I'm not into the Magic the Gathering deep cuts, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, oh no, this will be. Oh well, we'll see if Pete even unlocks the occultist.
I didn't unlock the occultist.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know that it's good, but it is interesting.
Yes.
All right, so Pete, it is
Yes.
now your turn to pick.
It is my
What do we
turn
do
to
next?
pick. I feel like we don't play enough roguelites on this podcast.
Fuck.
No, so I'll give you guys an option. We can play a Viking roguelite, or we can play 2 strange, tiny free games that I would combine into one episode.
Ooh.
Tiny and free, please.
All right, tiny and free it is. So there are 2 games I want to play. The first, very topical, it's Fulfillment. You play...
Finally.
Yeah, you play a Amazon worker in the warehouse. And it is lighthearted and fun. A casual romp. And the other one is The Supper. It's supposed to be, again, a very short foray into the darkness that is the human soul, I think the tagline read.
The Supper?
The
Or-
Supper, yes.
Okay.
I can pull it up right here on Steam if we need more details. Yes, it is The Supper. Here is the quote. The Supper is a short adventure game about the darkest side of the human soul. Miss Appleton was always a wellspring of kindness until the voice started talking to her.
Oh no.
Yeah, the voice. So that's what we're going with.
So this is a Dune tie-in?
Yeah, basically. But I think it's going to be good. I think we're going to enjoy it.
In the time you were describing both of these games, I installed both of them.
Yes, I was about to say the same thing.
That's exactly the kind of thing I'm looking for on this one.
It's an excellent sign.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you, M.
Thank you. Get me out of here before I become a robot again.
Thank you, Pete.
Yes, it was a interesting experience. I'll say that.
And thank you, listeners. Reminder, you can get in touch with the show at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens@libsyn.com. We have our comment sections and deeplistenspodcast at gmail.com. You can also support the show on patreon.com/deeplistens. If only 3 more of you do it, we play Unlimited Saga. And you can also go get ready for the Giant Bomb Community Endurance Run, which is this Friday, April 8th, raising money for Pencils of Promise. All right. Till next time. Peace.